Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Wake Up Missoula. I am using green screen. So welcome to my morning show. I'm here to talk about a lot of things happening in and around the city of Missoula and more. I got your city council report where they address some of the issues pertaining to the emergency levy that the city of Missoula put into place to help curb urban camping. Not to mention there's a lot of great new projects coming this way through federal grants to the city of Missoula. But before we get into all that, we're going to jump right in. And one of the things that are happening here in the city of Missoula is Jim Nugent, a lawyer for the city of Missoula, after 48 years, starting his job in 1975, is retiring. His retirement officially begins today, and with that, he's been a big supporter of MCAT and helped draft the Memorandum of Understanding with Bresnan, which became Optimum, which is now Charter, Spectrum, all that kind of stuff. They've changed the name so many different times, but he was even there to help with franchising with TDS, which is the competitor to Charter, to get money from cable companies to help pay MCAT staff to provide services for Missoula and put on city council meetings online as well. Jim was one of the few people in the city who spoke. Everyone listened, with very little argued with his counsel on matters regarding legal issues. That's the kind of man Jim Nugent was, and will enjoy a nice retirement while others will take up the mantle as city attorney. Of course, they have a large array of people with the within legal. Ryan Sudbury has been answering legal questions in past meetings, but there are about 3 others rounding out the 5 legal experts directly under the city, with the 13 city prosecutors. There are quite a few lawyers under Missoula's belt that whether or not they're going to hire within or they're going to hire someone else completely is up to them. Columbus, Montana, near Billings had a bridge collapse that derailed, carrying molten sulfur and hot asphalt. So this is a big news that happened in the state of Montana earlier this week. The derailment happened over the Yellowstone River around 6 a.m. Saturday, and water treatment facilities in Laurel, Billings, and Lockwood, as well as the irrigation canal companies, instituted emergency protection measures Saturday morning, including shutting down headgates due to potential hazmat spill at the Yellowstone River in Stillwater County. 10 cars fell into the Yellowstone River when the bridge collapsed. The Montana Department of Environmental Quality tested the water along waterways and treatment facilities in Yellowstone and Stillwater counties on Sunday and found no negative impacts, said David Stammy, the chief emergency services in Stillwater County. So far, concerns are being met by Montana RailLink and aim to clean this and prevent spread of potential dangerous chemicals from asphalt, which is oil-based, but according to Star's hazmat consultant, said that the primary hazard from hot asphalt and molten sulfur was their high temperatures. This made headlines this week in many source East Palestine, since it happened around 4 months ago. Since we are also on this topic, I always want to suggest and give a bit of praise to my coworker Ron Scholl for writing a book called Gassed: The True Story of the Toxic Train Derailment. This is based on the train derailment in Elberton, Montana, which at the time was the largest chemical spill from a train in U.S. history, and this was back in 1996. Speaking with residents and officials alike, the disaster carries weight in response to environmental disasters. The case for a clean and livable climate wrapped up last week with backing from Montana kids aged 6 to 22 in what they claim was a battle for their future and environment. While many defendants have stated these kids were coerced into the case and dismissed by stating that legislation should draft laws and citizens should go through their local representatives instead of suing the state. This was also on the heels of the passage of Montana House Bill 971, which prohibited regulators from taking greenhouse gas emissions into account when approving a new project. Like radiation, you can't see it and convince people it exists. Even harder to convince them. So the case is pretty cut and dry, with the state of Montana and the Department of Environmental Quality to the standards of the state's constitution, ergo a clean and livable environment. Many of the youth argue that Montana has not lived up to those standards and want the state to protect the land and go after organizations that are using Montana land for profit over the environment. So Montana ranks 5th in coal production among all states in the county, all states in the country, as well as 12th in oil production last week. An expert witness for Plaintiffs and Hedges of Montana Environmental Information Center testified that DEQ had never once denied a fossil fuel permit application like those sought by power plants and coal mining operations. As of this week, Missoula's failing and leaking water system is now in an upswing. This comes at a time when the city wanted to replace upwards of about 1% or over a mile of piping per, actually, no. Let's take this back. But so one of the things is that they wanted to be able to replace 1% of the whole piping infrastructure a year. It doesn't always equate to a mile, but the whole idea is that they want to be able to basically replace water lines, water pipelines, and all that kind of stuff, at least 1% a year. And so far, they're now at a point where they're replacing more pipes than they're breaking down. So yes, this is a part of a plan that is, I believe it's a 100-year projection plan. So yeah, it's insane. So one of the quotes by Mayor Jordan Hess says that they're saving almost 600,000 kilowatt hours of electricity this year over the last year, just based on fixing leaks. It's a huge cost saving and huge climate savings, because with a leaky system, you have to pump even harder with electricity, and a lot of this, and also he added that the city is using the rates that would originally go to private holding companies like Carlyle Group, a billion-dollar holding company, for profits, rather than it being reinvested in the community. So that's the weird thing about a public utility being privately owned. So that was one of the huge arguments. So Carlisle has also been known to buy up properties, especially trailer parks, which has functioned to create a built-in affordability, and now many folks and their trailers have to move or collectively come together to pay for the land that is appreciated beyond affordability in some cases. There are a bigger picture, and Missoula has had to hold fast and pay out millions of dollars just to get a chance to buy for the overpriced water system, which Carlyle Group wanted to package it up into other water companies in California. So long-term investments usually never bear fruit within a political cycle, which is why it's become easy to blame the previous administration and take the glory. Missoula has an interesting time in making it work and keeping rates and money for Missoula rather than bonuses for owners. We had Mayor Hess talk about this on Wednesday with the mayor, the water company, and all the successes, the monthly rates in conjunction with Public Service Commission out of Montana. And so here is a quote from Wednesdays with the mayor. Assuming I get it to play. Excuse me.
It's not easy, and it's frequently not possible for everyday people to participate in water rate or in rate cases.
Rate cases, yeah.
Northwestern's got a really complicated, really significant rate case in front of the PSC right now that'll impact everyone in our community, every Northwestern customer in our community, which is most of the community. And in order to weigh in on that, you really have to have the specialized knowledge and the authorization to appear before the PSC.
You have to have standing.
You have to have standing.
Which is always interesting,
yeah. You don't have to have standing to go to the Missoula City Council chambers and express an opinion about water rates. You can come on down on a Monday night and you can talk about the water system, and you can talk about the concerns. You can talk, if there are water rates being decided, that happens here locally in downtown Missoula with people who live in the community, who you see in the grocery store, who are accountable to the community, and that's they're not being made in a boardroom on the coast, ratified by the Public Service Commission, and that's a huge benefit for our community.
Okay, so yeah, with that weird freezing happening, yeah, the quote is clear. It's easy to complain the closer you are to the ones in charge. And just in terms of just big corporations coming to Montana and just kind of not using the best values. One of the big things of bad practices from the state comes at the heels of a legal dispute against Governor Greg Gianforte involving former Pegasus Mining Company and future of Helka's mining operation in Montana. So I spoke about this a lot back in November 2021. And so one of the things is that there was a lawsuit pending. This was part of the MEIC and Earthworks to sue for documents on March 15th, 2022. They stated that the government is allowed some discretion to withhold certain documents that may violate someone's privacy or their other privileges, but the governor's office withheld everything, not even bothering to go through the evaluation process, which violated the government's clear duty. And so back in 1998, Pegasus Gold declared bankruptcy without having reclaimed the mines, so the expensive cleanup was left to the Montana taxpayers. One of the things is that the Pegasus Gold mine operation saw that CEO Philip J. Baker Jr. left the ecological disaster and was not cleaned up, and has since left in the late 90s, only to come back recently under the mining company of Helka. So the concerns over the damage and pollution that could result from Helka's two massive silver mines proposed adjacent to and beneath the Cabinet Mountain wilderness in northern Montana. They don't want Montana taxpayers left holding the bag yet again. Another big win happening for the city of Missoula is more than $60 million in infrastructure grants awarded to the city of Missoula. First big chunk is the $39 million going to the transit center to hold Mountain Line and create a place to hold and transfer buses and people around our town. Of course, I was there when they were talking about the consultants and trying to create a better bus system, which evolved into this whole fare-free system. So, and not to mention dumping Route 10, which I had a personal stake in as well. So it was unfortunate that they had to get rid of Route 10 because that was the one that went to Mullen, but also beyond to the former Smurfit Stone site, which was the cardboard manufacturer that has now since closed. So the new maintenance and operations facility will be fully electric, which also adheres to the agency's goal of creating a vehicle fleet that emits no tailpipe emission by 2035, the same year as the city and county's clean electrical goals. Last time Missoula got a $11 million grant to get those 10 electric buses, and the only thing that they need now is a location for all the new transit center. Perhaps the city hall, I mean, I've made this suggestion a couple times, the city council as well, as be like, you know, since they are moving to the federal post office, which will be a while before they actually officially move in the post office with the Missoula County administrative and the city administrative living in one roof together, but I digress. One of the big things is that, you know, there's a whole transit center that's the downtown. There's that free city block where City Hall was. And, you know, it depends because there's a lot of different operations happening within City Hall, not just the city government, you know, district courts, all that kind of stuff. So it's just, you know, another thing happening as well. But to move on to the next grant is the $24 million grant going towards the downtown Higgins corridor, not to mention to repaint and redo Front and Main Street to make them two-way rather than them just being the double threats that they were. And the reason why they're called the double threat is the idea that, you know, when you have pedestrians crossing, a car stops and then the other car on the other side going the same direction doesn't know that the person is either turning or that there's someone actually crossing the street, especially if the person is turning and there's someone is crossing the street, and then you just don't know until it's person's just coming out of the blind spot of the car that's obstructing the person. So that's one of the big things that to deal with helping with the double threat stuff. So this will also give the city some money to create single lanes. While I've been following these best laid plans through the winter, many of these grants can be a game changer, and we still haven't talked about the Midtown corridor, which I'll be talking about a little bit during my city council report, and that's a big push through that as well. Let's see. One big deal is the Mountain Line lane. They proposed to shoot down the middle of Brooks 93 to make public transit more efficient, because this kind of works in conjunction with the Midtown Master Plan and the Mountain Line, is that they want to create a bus line that goes directly down the middle of Brooks 93 to make it easier to travel for a designated bus lane rather than dealing with the traffic that's already down there. So another item this week was Montana Rail Link adding one of their unused train bridges over the Clark Fork near the baseball park as a pedestrian bridge, due to begin in the 2024 budget. Costs would include around $3.5 million to the Urban Renewal District, which has 8 years left from tax revenue streams. It is the season for construction now, and it looks like Missoula is looking to open and improve the city, and all the Build Back Better money is really starting to kick in as the state of Montana got $628 million to bring high-speed internet to rural Montana. This is a small part of the $42 billion investment that the Build Back Better is moving towards as well. So there's the tax system is going to need an overhaul when it comes to folks living in one state and working out of others, but that's a story for another time. So up next we have a retrospective of our Saturday drop-in. So these are a lot of the videos that the kids have made over the course of the school's fiscal year of school year of 2022-2023. So here is a nice example of this with a couple PSAs at the end.
Someone just got off. I hate my job! Rorik Z! Oh no!
Hey Missoula, Mark Moss from Tell Us Something here. Wanting to let you know that we are looking for storytellers for our next live storytelling event. The event takes place on September 28th. The theme is Lost in Translation. If you would like to pitch your story for Lost in Translation, call 406-203-4683. The pitch deadline is August 20th. As soon as I hear your pitch, I will call you and let you know that I got it. And from there, if you're selected, we'll workshop our stories together, and there is a group workshop. Please pitch your story for Lost in Translation by calling 406-203-4683. Thanks.
Hey guys, welcome back. Let's jump right into our next segment. I like to call Pre-Critic. Definitely one of the fun times I like to have on my morning show where I judge a movie. that I haven't seen based on absolutely nothing but my pre-biases. Yes, Indiana Jones 5 and the Dial of Destiny. Ooh, we see a young CGI'd Indiana Jones in a sequence that reminds you of a simpler time where Nazis were the bad guy, and using them as the go-to bad guy for movies is just being on display in a 1969 Summer of Love that joins Harrison Ford as Henry Jones Jr. on his verge of retirement again. But even more related to the way Disney takes famous characters and then turning them into old, bitter men and must get help from a plucky young thing that is better than the original without giving anything in return. You see plenty of familiar faces in this movie that will get boomer cooing and more in this nostalgia bait that spends too much time on making Indy look like Beowulf than just hiring a young actor to portray him. Ruby Gillman, Teenage Kraken. You like those How to Train Your Dragon type movies, DreamWorks, all that stuff. Kraken lives matter. And in this film, we follow a young girl with a giant squid powers to take on the evil mermaids, which follows loosely with the lore and makes up a good for the environment and ocean message, muddied by the overuse of teenage awkward and meta joke humor to make people groan, and teenagers will be spending their summer drag racing and getting into all sorts of trouble. Watch as the Kraken learns that she has always been awesome in the story that pits a school outcast with a popular girl who just happens to be the so-called mermaid villain. Honestly, like, you watch the trailer, it's like, this is everything. This movie is coming out next weekend. I'm not going to be here next Friday, so I'm just going to talk about some of the movies that are coming next weekend. Joyride, two Asian girls. It's a plot point, trust me, who become friends at an early age and must find the one girl's biological parents in China in one of those raunchy comedies that are taking the wind from Crazy Rich Asians and just kind of rolling with it. So family dynamics get picked apart from raised by non-Asian parents versus biological parents, and how the Americanized one leans more towards traditional because of the grass is greener in China, then the other side is kind of, and the other one is kind of burned out, is kind of like the gross, comic relief, goofy character, Oscar, basically. So it's The Odd Couple. That's what it is. It's The Odd Couple, and that's what their motivating is. So, Insidious, The Red Door. I can indeed confirm that there is a red door in this movie, and I have not seen any of these films because horrors are kind of a pass for me. I hate jump scares. Like, I like terror, like building up to it, but like when it comes to like just jump scares, it's like I don't like cheap jump scares. But it's easy to turn a profit, cheap to make. And, here's basically follows the film of the little boy from the original film who's all grown up in college, and it's always like, oh, not again. And the not so fast demons, this movie follows a family plagued by those that go bump in the night. Anyways, hold on a second. Anyways, their one kid from earlier films is now going to college to meet girls and even more ghouls. Finally, we have a movie that's, you remember those, that movie Holes with Shia LaBeouf? This movie is basically Holes. It's where, you have a summer camp, but there's hidden treasure, and, it's under the guise of the hidden camp. So that's basically what this movie is. I haven't seen a trailer. All I know is that there's some actors in this, but it kind of seems like they haven't really done much advertising for this at all, and it's coming out next weekend. So I don't know. This might be a tax write-off. And those are the movies that are coming out this weekend. Up next, we have Five Against the House, from the 1955 movie starring a guy who looks a lot like the Colin Firth from The King's Speech. So without further ado, here is Dubbin Stuff.
La 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 la. Ooh. Hey there. You look like someone familiar. Perhaps a movie star of some sorts from the past?
You flatter me. So, party, huh?
Well, whenever there's a party, everyone in town shows up.
All right, I'll light you this time, but don't blow smoke in my face.
Mm-hmm. You mean like this?
You smell like hairspray and nicotine, just like my mother used to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did she pass?
Oh, no. She's in Florida, so maybe.
When a man starts talking to a strange woman about his mother, I can already hear the wedding bell start ringing for the two of us. So what do you think about that? Do you like me? Do you think you like me?
Well, if you're anything like my mother, you'd want me to shut up and kiss you.
Well, that's a lot to unpack.
Well, come here for a second. We shared a cigarette, so we pretty much shared germs, so... So I told him, hey, yo, King's Speech. Ooh, could you just, leave us alone? I'm, in the middle of something. Oh, I can really tell that you're in the middle of something. Oh, sorry, buddy. She reminds me of my mother. Ma'am, you shouldn't be with that guy. He votes third party.
Ooh. But,
Oh, how do you like that, Colin Firth? You just think that you can just walk into any room, any party, look all snazzy and stuff, and give your king speech to all the ladies? Hey, wait, I'm talking to you. You look like a bargain bin George C. Scott and Will Ferrell. You take that back, you SOB. Kick! Ha-ha! Do I look like George C. Scott and Will Ferrell now? I got no more words, no more speeches for you. Ooh! Come here, Colin Firth. Yeah! Go! Oh! Oh no! This isn't the king's speech! This is the king's man! Oh, he's gonna kill me! Oh God, he's got the pepper shaker. I'm gonna get you. Get out of there! Stop right now. Stop! You hear me? Stop! Put this down. No! That's enough of this. No! He called me Colin Firth.
Oh, wait, is that not Colin Firth? He kind of looks exactly like him.
Are you calm? I don't want to be the king's speech. I don't want to look like Colin Firth. Why is this happening to me? I'm just some guy. It's okay. We're gonna go home, we're gonna watch a movie, and it's not gonna star Colin Firth. All right, we're going to jump right into your city council report as I'm talking a little bit more about what's happening within the city of Missoula. Kicking things off, let's see, hold on, let me freeze up. Hold on a second, it's gonna, oh, okay. Well, the technical problems happen constantly, so you always got to prepare for them, so this is me prepared. Let's see, oh wow, it doesn't even want to work with the USB. Okay, there we go. All right, so coming off a very big grant week, the city of Missoula is back with city council, and so am I. Today, the topics range from accounts payable to updating language when it comes to hosting primaries and local elections. Sapphire Place annexation, which takes up about the 3 lots of the already 300 units they plan on building the east of Hellgate Elementary off Flynn Lane. This is a major development within the city, and this is just kind of like fixing up a couple things, and they did some rezoning to open it up a little bit more. So originally these sites were ag land, and over the last 20 years or so have seen much of these land being converted, but there's a bigger picture than the 3 lots on these 39 lot proposal. Another topic is addressing services related to sewer and water, as the buildings need these amenities, and the city-owned water company has to create payment plans for these new areas. Overnight camping, this is one of the big things that are happening in which the city used loopholes within the city-owned property of parks to basically say, like, hey, we can designate open hours of these parks. And so thus far the city has removed encampments near the Poverello Center homeless shelter and even put up a fence. So Kevin Hunt talks a little bit more about moving encampments from the former YWCA area.
Really pleased to read that that had been in the works for several days, and that efforts were made to try to get people relocated. It's always sad when we have to move people, but that had become a health issue, and I think it was handled compassionately and, from what I could see, pretty efficiently. So I'm not here to celebrate, but I want to congratulate the city on doing that. Okay.
And so he's been pretty vocal about some of the things that are happening within the city, as well as a lot of the encampments. The next steps are in place to reopen the Johnson Street shelter, but in many ways it's taking time, and it cannot open overnight. However, Kevin Hunt spoke mostly about this community is dealing with homelessness and claiming that most of these new homeless were residents of Missoula and not just this rumor of freeloaders from out of state and out of town. David Aronofsky, former resident of Austin, talks about options for shelters on top of Johnson Street.
You need to know what you're getting into, and I would recommend that the staff do a deep research dive into communities first. 1, it's faith-based. 2, it's on private land that was donated by the person who started it. The organization that set it up and runs it and is getting millions and millions of dollars in grants is as legitimate as it comes. It's Loaves and Fishes. One of my friends who's active in Loaves and Fishes drafted me to help with the housing at Communities First. It's a great model, which probably does have some applicability in Austin. But the thing I would mention about these two shelters I have experience with, they're permanent. Forget the word temporary. Just get it out of your mindset, because what we saw or what we see in Communities First of people who are there do not want to leave.
All right, and so that was one of the quotes from David Aronofsky. Then we got a quote, so essentially creating neighborhoods that accommodate the lowest common denominator of rent and using the land that already exists to create those tiny home villages is one example. Simply placing people where you want them and not removing them from where you don't creates a social climate that is welcoming, and essentially essentially foisting somewhere to somewhere else rather than you can't be here mindset makes it a little bit harder. So why would a homeless person contribute to a society that has shunned them? It's maddening. So Jordan has talked about the emergency ordinance and kind of what's next for the city's plans.
Just a few weeks ago, I issued an emergency declaration directing our staff to reopen or provide plans to reopen the Johnson Street shelter as soon as possible. And that work is underway, and we will continue working through that. That'll be in my executive budget that I bring to the council on Wednesday. Also, Mr. Nugent's referral that passed tonight that directs city staff to continue to work on a variety of other options, as well as all of the ongoing work that is happening within the city that has been happening for a long time and will continue to happen to address ways that we can provide services and support and options and stability for our unsheltered residents and neighbors in the community.
Yep. And so, one big takeaway from just a lot of things that are happening in terms of just the more homelessness and all this kind of stuff happening in the city of Missoula is that, rent's going up, there's not many options in terms of, higher paying wages. And just because, like you see a sign that says $14 an hour, that's essentially meaning that you can earn up to $14 an hour. You gotta watch the fine print, and so there's a couple places in town that aren't, putting it down right away. It's the whole idea is that they're trying to get people and retain people, and if they retain you long enough, you might be able to get to that point, but it's still not enough to live off of Missoula. And so, it's not necessarily that there's the homeless population is growing. It's just the idea that the residents are losing their homes at a lot more higher pace than they were before. And it's not just a Missoula issue too, as you've probably heard many times before. But Donna Gockler, Director of Parks and Recreation, talks about some of the parks and how they're moving about basically having designated times.
What the change is to actually remove public lands that are not under the purview of Parks and Recreation. So it's been a long-standing law that all public lands in the city of Missoula do not allow sleeping or camping. This change removes any lands that are not under the direct purview of Parks and Recreation.
So essentially, what she means is that as soon as because sorry, the open space, which is not technically parkland, but the parks themselves have a facility status that basically allows the park to close like a shop downtown or a local cafe restaurant. Creating active hours created the barrier to curb overnight camping and to give police some authority to remove folks. You don't need a permit you do need a permit to actually have alcohol in a park, and if there's any gathering of sorts or organized gathering, there are also rental fees for somebody using some of the park. And it's very clear, if not a little bit eyebrow raising, the length the city has gone to evict overnight in campus even further. So Donna Gockler talks about some of the issues in the park, regardless of homeless issues, and talks about vandalism.
There are things that are happening that have absolutely nothing to do with unsheltered individuals. These are a few of examples of vandalism. Yes, the pictures are taken in daylight. The vandalism happened overnight. So if we can close parks, it gives us the ability to manage and hopefully protect lands more fully. So we have a broken table at the Veteran Cemetery, a Confederated Salish Kootenai tribal interpretive sign for bear tracks, and an example of a restroom that was badly damaged at Fort Missoula Regional Park as well.
Yeah. So in a lot of places, even Fort Missoula Regional Park is a prime example because there's not a lot of homeless or houseless individuals that actually utilize Fort Missoula because it's kind of out of the way, further away from a lot of amenities in the city of Missoula. And so it's kind of interesting how, how that is going. Here is a couple actually words from homeless folks themselves. James Sehorn talks about this particular ordinance and how he feels about it.
It seems like everywhere I go, in the last 4 years since my injury on my arm, I've been in Nevada, I've been in Oregon, I've been in California, I've been in Montana, and it seems like there's a problem everywhere. It's not just here or in other places. It's happening everywhere. So, I mean, what can we do to help there to be somewhere for us to go?
All right. That was one of the quotes by one of the folks as well. We also have another quote by Mary Peterson, living in a tent, talks about her experience because she was just like anyone else working hard to get a job, and one bad thing after another led to her situation. And so here's Mary Peterson.
I would love for there to be someplace else for me to go. At 60 years old, I manage restaurants. I raised 5 kids by myself. I've done everything that I can do to prove that I am a good person, that I can do anything. And to end up being homeless has just about broken me. I've done so much. It just makes me so angry to watch people sit and judge our lives. We're not horrible people. Everybody thinks we're out drinking so much, or doing drugs, or doing all these things. We're not. We're surviving. We're trying to survive, people. We're not trying to take over the world. We just would like our own houses. We'd like some place to go. I'd like to cook a meal. That's all I would like to do. I'm not trying to ask for millions of dollars. I'm just asking, please, someone, put me somewhere. Yes, at 60, you know what? It's a little rough out there.
So that was Mary Peterson talking about her experiences. And, she told the city that there are less and less places for them to go, and it's getting harder to fight. Down in Colino City Council talks about the journey the city has forced the unhoused to undergo over the last 2 years. And Mayor Jordan Hess responds.
Some people that were staying at the authorized campsite, after the city decided to close that down, had to move to, camp somewhere else in town, or after the Johnson Street shelter closed at least. And some of those people that were staying at the authorized campsite were then staying at the Russell Street Bridge camp. And then the city has resources to move those people from there to there. And then after they got moved from the Russell Street camp, some of them were staying outside the POV. And then after they got moved from the POV, now some of them are staying, maybe at another park. And then now we're trying to move them from another park. And I guess I'm pretty upset about it, but I guess I'm just trying to figure out, why do we have so many resources to move people from one place to the other? And where are we expecting these people to go? Why can't we just provide them with somewhere to go?
No one has been pretending at any point in this process that this is an ideal scenario. These camp removals, to utilize the term that was suggested, actions are truly based on entrenchment and based on problematic behaviors that happen when there is a large encampment, and that is, as I mentioned at the outset, this is a suite of many other things. There's staff work to reopen the emergency winter shelter. The provider community meets regularly and suggests and recommends different approaches that we are in the process of taking. The provider community's overwhelming recommendation to me in the executive budget process was to prioritize reopening sheltering. And that is, as I mentioned at the beginning, that is something that you'll see in the fiscal year 2024 budget. And that is something that will remain a priority.
All right, so even the emergency levy is going to take a lot more time to fully implement, according to Jordan Hess. So, yeah, those are some of the main issues, the main things they were talking about for City Council. Mayor Hess responded to Carlino in many ways. Carlino has stock in his comments, and Jordan lives in the reality of addressing homelessness and residents' concerns. Carlino believes that the city provides and should not ban people from further from places that are meant for the public, warts and all. Anyways, this topic will be up for final consideration next Monday for their final vote. The other public hearings will have to do with the amount of dogs you own and needing a permit. You know, this is a kind of a way to help maybe potentially curb puppy mills, which in Montana, a few have been shut down, and the city wants to create a parameters to enforce this. However, getting a permit for owning multiple dogs can be annoying, if not a front against those seeking to save a lot of dogs overall. There's also updated the fees associated with adopting pets from the Humane Society, including various services from spay and neutering, along with various other costs when boarding pets per night, which is roughly about $20 a night for if you just use the Humane Society versus some of those more expensive places and whatnot. Anyways, Public Safety and Health Operations spoke about the updated contract with Missoula Parking Commission's employees. Budget Committee of the Whole is an ongoing, and I'll skim this meeting and add a little bit of blurb here. Missoula Mayor Hess brings up the executive budget to present to the board, which essentially is the start of the fiscal year 2024. Mayor Hess reading the cover letter essentially for the Budget Committee of the Whole. And so here is Jordan Hess talking about the mayor's executive budget that he presents to the city staff as they'll be arguing, amending, and doing all that stuff leading up until the August implementation of the fiscal year 2024.
This budget reflects hours of diligent work to craft a budget with the best outcome for the public we serve and for our staff who work hard to deliver the core services residents need and want. As reflected in our strategic plan, we aim for a balance between delivering those core services and innovating for the future. This is my first budget as mayor, but my 10th including my service on the city council. Last year, as you'll recall, was a challenging budget year. I'm grateful for the heavy lifting that former Mayor John Engen, staff, and council members did last year to steer our financial condition in a sound direction. Our property tax system in the state of Montana is fundamentally broken. In Missoula, in the 1980s, we had 4 lumber mills operating multiple shifts per day. Our home values were low, and we didn't have many visitors. Today, we don't have that industrial base economy. Our property values are soaring, and we have nearly 4 million tourists annually. Our property tax system is based on an economy that doesn't exist anymore.
All right, and so that was just kind of a retrospect of, he talks a little bit more about some of the challenges, some of the things as well. If that was your first notification of the fiscal challenges that the state cannot help and needs tax reform, you know, it bears repeating. This is also to address the emergency levy that will go into fund Johnson Seed Shelter to reopen year-round, as you heard, is a diluted budget from those services, and to also maintain the status quo of streets and general operations to keep the city running and inflated costs of material for development. So they are getting expensive across the board, and many organizations are connected to the City of Missoula's for Crime Victim Advocates, as mentioned in the ongoing statement, and the need to help survivors of crime. Jordan has also spoke about grants and how the city has used them to invest in improvements in housing and roads. They require matching funds to compete with other communities, which is also a line item with the fiscal year budget. So Lee Griffin with the staff report talks about how to find info through the budget committee process. So if you are really invested in the money and where the money is going for the city of Missoula, Engage Missoula is a great website to go to, but here is some of the more intricate details on how to find more information. Here's Lee Griffin.
Well, we have a variety of ways that you can get the information. As mentioned before, these documents are going to be updated throughout the presentation process. We're hoping to get as many documents as possible up before the very first presentation on the 12th. So if folks want to navigate to the city website and the budget page, which is under the Financial Services Department, there will also be budget information on our Engage Missoula page. There's also the option for folks to comment on the Engage Missoula page.
All right. So one of the things that she brought up as well is that Engage Missoula is a good website for people to get involved. EngageMissoula.com. You can see all the events that are happening within all the projects, not the events. This is a project based. So imagine, how I use MissoulaEvents.net as a way to kind of tell you about what's going on in Missoula based on people uploading it. This one's more about, hey, what kind of projects are going on and are ongoing. So here is like the link to the fiscal year 2024 budget. So if I click on it, it opens up another page from this website. You can see Midtown Master Plan and whatnot. So I'll talk a little bit more about the Midtown Master Plan after I've kind of showed you a little bit about the fiscal year. Kind of shows you some of the things, you see like the utility trucks, all the ones for, plowing your streets and determining the grids and, that kind of stuff. And so you have your budget guide, baseline challenges, budget analysis, and just all sorts of different things, news blurbs. And so it's an interesting website used as like a blog, and they have staff ready to answer any questions that you may or may not have during this budgeting process and other projects as well. So that is there. I also have another thing going on through Climate Conservation and Parks, which they're talking about the North Side Bridge. So this is the pedestrian bridge that goes over the train tracks. They closed it because they did an inspection check, and they determined that it is unsafe to travel across. And the foundation, they found some foundational issues going on with there, so they're going to try to extend the life of it. One of the biggest critiques of the former people who built the project in the first place is that the engineer with the city was very concerned because he couldn't find too much information on the project after the fact, because it's like it kind of felt like it was made and they just be like, okay, let's move on. And then, just archives and stuff like that. So it's interesting about this, but this is about a $2.5 million project underway. This goes over the train tracks, and so it's kind of a big deal if there's anything that goes wrong with this one. So this is a higher priority for the city of Missoula to get moving forward. And so here is one of the engineers talking more about this project.
Full bidder and Jackson Contractor Group in the amount of just under $2.5 million. That will provide for replacement of the masonry block in both structures, and will replace the access ramps interior to those structures. Jackson Contractor Group is amenable to a January 1 substantial completion date for reopening if we do everything in our power to get them on site as soon as they can.
All right, so yeah, I mean they're trying to get this thing open as soon as possible, and weather permitting and stuff like that. That's why they do aim to have a January 1st, 2024 opening for the pedestrian bridge again. But then, of course, on the website you can find out more information. Not to mention all the detours you can take in case you don't want to, in case you are you used to be relying on this, and so far this has been a long process because they closed it back in 2022, and so it's going to be quite a bit of time before it really kind of gets open and is deemed safe enough. Another topic was the Montana Forest Action Plan, which received $100,000 for forest management work to complete the Montana's Dean Stone Preserve. This is part of the mountain, Dean Stone, and a big chunk of this, because it's a lot of the transmission for local TV and radio is through the Dean Stone area as well. So that's another big push within this particular meeting. Land Use and Planning drove the Midtown Master Plan, which I'm going to talk a little bit about because this is a big deal for the Midtown. This basically spans from as far as Rose Park, essentially, towards a little bit past the Southgate Mall kind of area. And so Melanie Brooke is the spearhead the presentation and is the kind of the go-to person for the Midtown Master Plan. And this is what she had to say about the particulars of it.
And one of the most exciting things is the rebranding and taking the malfunction out of Midtown. We are hoping as part of this effort that we can all now call it Midtown Junction. There is no longer any malfunction in our core area of Missoula. So these are just some of the pieces, and if you have any questions, we could help answer them. But we heard that more places to gather as a public was something that the community wanted. So one of the ideas is an activation of a Festival Street concept on South Avenue, going out towards the fort from Brooks, more placemaking, more active ground use, ground use of buildings, that commercial on the bottom floor and housing on top. We heard from residents consistently that they want to be able to walk to get groceries and coffee and be able to move more easily around Midtown without a car.
And, you know, this also is one of those feeder streets that go from Brooks to 93. So you're essentially a highway transitional road that goes through downtown Missoula is kind of one of those things that they're trying to determine to make it easier and safer for just pedestrians and bikers, and overall just creating a space for people to actually have walkability throughout this area as well. So this has been a big project moving forward, and I'm going to wrap up my City Council report with this video presented by the Midtown Master Plan Committee. So this is what here's a 3-minute video. Enjoy, and when I come back, we're going to talk a little bit some MCAT stuff.
Welcome to Midtown, centrally located within the heart of Missoula. This collection of neighborhoods is home to a variety of regional attractions. Midtown has several corridors that connect it to the rest of the city. Brooks Street is the diagonal corridor that acts as a spine through the heart of the district. Russell Street is the primary north-south connector, and South Avenue crosses the valley from mountain to mountain, connecting a variety of Midtown destinations along the way. The Bitterroot Trail is a regional pedestrian and bike corridor connecting Midtown to other trail networks throughout Missoula and beyond. Where each one of these main corridors connects through Midtown, the master plan aims to create key moments of arrival, including safe crossings for pedestrians and cyclists. And where all these connectors come together, we aim to create the heart of Midtown, known as Midtown Junction. This area will feature enhanced streetscapes for walkers and cyclists, as well as buildings with active ground floors. Rose Park Center will offer neighborhood amenities and be a hub for entrepreneurs and local business owners. Southgate Triangle will enhance the area surrounding the mall and provide an improved pedestrian experience. Franklin to the Fort will support a range of housing types and community amenities, including parks, within short walking or biking distance. Lewis and Clark will improve access to local parks and walkable neighborhood services. And Central Park will be a regional destination for recreation, events, and community gathering. In stitching all of these areas together, the master plan aims to expand the existing network of parks and greenways, enhancing the overall permeability throughout this area. Now that we have a picture of the future of Midtown at a district scale, let's zoom into this iconic Midtown Junction intersection to see a high-level representation of how the master plan could transform this area. A recent addition of a multi-family building has already added some density to this central location. Over time, public realm improvements might transform this car-dominated area into a vibrant place for people and events. This could include temporary pop-ups like food trucks, art walks, and farmers markets. And as energy builds around the heart of Midtown, more opportunities for people to live, work, and play here may continue to transform the area into a place for people and the community.
Well then, there you go. There's a nice retrospect of things that are happening within the Midtown, the proposal, the moving forward, and just trying to be like, hey, this is what we're all about. So that pretty much concludes everything that I wanted to talk about today. I was going to talk a little bit about events that are happening, but since I'm not going to necessarily be here next Friday, I want to see about rerunning this for next Friday as well. Wink, wink, Lori. So I hope you guys enjoyed my morning show. I will be gone next week. I'm going out of town for a wedding, which will be fun. I can't wait for that. It's been a while since I took a trip or flew in a plane, so I'm excited to do that and more. So for Wake Up Missoula, I'm Sky Ramp. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. Take care.